What's up, everyone? Tonight's feature is your life as a geisha. No time to waste. Let's get this tale underway. In the soft amber glow of lanterns that flickered against paper screens, my journey into the floating world began not with grand ceremony, but with the simple act of learning to walk differently. The wooden geta sandals felt foreign beneath my feet, their elevated platforms requiring a completely new relationship with balance and grace that would become second nature only after months of practice. My Akasen, the woman who would become like a mother to me in this strange new world, watched with patient eyes as I stumbled through those first tentative steps across the polished floors of the Akiya. The morning ritual started before dawn, when the city of Kyoto still slept under its blanket of mist, and the only sounds were the soft whisper of fabric against fabric as we prepared for another day of transformation. The white powder that would become my second skin arrived in small ceramic containers, mixed with water until it reached the perfect consistency that would create the porcelain mask that was both protection and performance. The application required steady hands and an understanding of light and shadow that went far beyond mere cosmetics, for each brush stroke was deliberate, each line drawn with the precision of calligraphy. Learning to apply the makeup was like learning a new language, one where every curve of red on the lips spoke of seasons and experience, where the thickness of the white foundation at the nape of the neck created sensual glimpses of natural skin that could make poets weep. The transformation from ordinary girl to geisha happened gradually each morning, layer by careful layer, until I could no longer recognize the reflection staring back at me from the bronze mirror. The weight of the kimono surprised me those first weeks, the way the silk seemed to have its own gravity, pulling and shifting with every movement until I learned to move with it rather than against it. The obi, that magnificent sash that could cost more than a family's yearly income, required the assistance of others to tie properly, its complex knots and folds creating a sculptural element that changed the very shape of my body. I discovered that wearing kimono was not simply putting on clothes, but rather inhabiting a different version of myself, one that demanded a different posture, a different way of sitting, standing, and moving through space. The shamisen became my constant companion during those early years, its 3 strings and long neck requiring a completely different approach to music than anything I had known before. The plectrum, carved from tortoiseshell and shaped like a fan, became an extension of my hand, and the complex notation system that looked like abstract art slowly revealed itself to be a sophisticated language of rhythm and melody. Hours dissolved as I practiced the same passage over and over, my fingers gradually learning to find their way across the strings without conscious thought, my voice learning to match the instrument's plaintive tones. Tea ceremony lessons happened in a room so quiet you could hear the water beginning to simmer in the iron kettle, its gentle bubbling marking time in a world where every gesture carried meaning. The way one held the tea bowl, the angle at which it was presented, the specific words spoken at each moment of the ceremony, all of these elements combined to create something that was simultaneously performance and meditation. My sensei, an elderly woman whose hands had been preparing tea for longer than I had been alive, taught me that true mastery came not from perfect execution, but from the ability to remain present and graceful even when things went wrong. Dance required a different kind of discipline altogether, one that demanded I forget everything I thought I knew about movement and expression. The classical forms we studied traced their lineage back centuries, each gesture codified and preserved, passed down from teacher to student in an unbroken chain of tradition. A raised fan could represent falling cherry blossoms or a lover's departure. A turn of the head might suggest the moon's path across the sky, and the way one's feet moved across the floor could tell entire stories of love, loss, and transcendence without a single word being spoken. Hanamachi, our flower town, became my entire universe during those formative years. Its narrow streets and traditional wooden buildings creating a world within a world where time seemed to move differently than in the rest of Kyoto. The other geisha became my sisters, some kind and nurturing, others competitive and occasionally cruel. All of us bound together by the peculiar intimacy of sharing this ancient profession that so few truly understood. We competed for the attention of the same patrons, compared the gifts we received, gossiped about who was rising and who was falling in the complex hierarchy that governed our lives. My first public performance terrified me in ways I hadn't anticipated. The weight of expectations and tradition pressing down like the humid summer air that made our elaborate costumes cling uncomfortably to our skin. The audience, a mix of businessmen, politicians, and wealthy tourists, watched with expressions ranging from genuine appreciation to casual curiosity. And I realized that night that being a geisha meant being simultaneously celebrated and objectified, revered and misunderstood, traditional and exotic all at once. The economic realities of our profession revealed themselves gradually. The complex system of debts and payments that bound us to the Akiya while promising eventual independence. Every meal, every lesson, every piece of clothing, and every cosmetic had a price that accumulated over months and years, creating a financial obligation that could take decades to repay. Some girls never escaped this cycle, growing old in service to their debts, while others managed to navigate the system successfully enough to eventually establish their own independence or marry their way out of the floating world entirely. Seasons marked the rhythm of our lives in ways that city dwellers rarely experience. The changing colors of our kimono reflecting the subtle shifts from spring's cherry blossoms to summer's festival fireworks to autumn's maple leaves to winter's snow-covered rooftops. Each season brought its own celebrations, its own traditional foods, its own particular beauty that we were expected not just to appreciate, but to embody in our dress, our conversation, and our artistic performances. The clients who became regular patrons were as varied as autumn leaves, each bringing their own needs, desires, and complications into our carefully orchestrated world. Some sought intellectual companionship, engaging us in conversations about literature, politics, or philosophy that could stretch late into the night. Others wanted nothing more than to be entertained by our singing and dancing, to briefly escape their everyday responsibilities in a world of silk and sake and carefully curated beauty. A few developed deeper attachments, relationships that blurred the lines between professional and personal in ways that could be both rewarding and dangerous. Learning to read people became as important as learning to read music. The ability to sense what a client needed or wanted often determining the success of an evening. Some men needed to feel powerful and important, requiring careful attention to their stories and opinions. Others seemed lonely despite their wealth and position, seeking genuine conversation and companionship more than entertainment. The skill lay in adapting one's personality and performance to match the mood and needs of each situation, while maintaining the essential dignity and mystery that made a geisha more than just an entertainer. The politics within the hanamachi proved as complex as those in any government ministry, with shifting alliances, unspoken hierarchies, and subtle competitions playing out daily. The most successful geisha were those who learned to navigate these social currents with grace, building networks of support among their sisters while avoiding the pitfalls of jealousy and gossip that could destroy careers. Reputation was everything, and a single scandal could undo years of careful cultivation of image and relationships. My training in classical poetry opened doorways to a kind of beauty I hadn't known existed. The way a few carefully chosen words could capture entire seasons, emotions, or philosophical concepts with elegant precision. Writing haiku became a form of meditation, the discipline of finding exactly the right image and rhythm teaching me to observe the world with heightened awareness. During quiet moments between obligations, I would sit in the small garden behind the akiya, watching the way light fell across stone lanterns, or the way rain created temporary rivers between the stepping stones, searching for those perfect moments worthy of 17 syllables. The transformation that occurred each evening as I prepared for work never ceased to fascinate me. The way makeup and costume could create a person who was simultaneously me and not me, familiar and mysterious. The face that looked back from the mirror seemed to belong to someone else entirely, someone more confident, more mysterious, more beautiful than the ordinary girl who had first walked through the doors of the akiya years before. This daily metamorphosis became a kind of ritual preparation, a way of mentally shifting into the role I would play for the evening's entertainment. Food in the floating world carried meanings beyond mere sustenance, each meal carefully composed to reflect the season, the occasion, and the status of the diners. Learning to appreciate the subtle flavors of kaiseki cuisine required training my palate to detect nuances I had never noticed before. The way a single perfect strawberry could embody the essence of spring, or how the presentation of autumn vegetables could evoke entire landscapes. Even the sake we served carried significance, different varieties appropriate for different times of year, different occasions, different relationships between host and guest. The most challenging aspect of our profession was learning to maintain authentic warmth and charm, while keeping appropriate emotional distance from clients who might easily mistake professional kindness for personal affection. This delicate balance required constant vigilance and considerable emotional intelligence, the ability to be genuinely caring without becoming genuinely attached, to provide comfort and companionship while protecting one's own heart from the complications that arose when business relationships became personal ones. Winter in Kyoto brought a special kind of beauty to our world, the snow transforming familiar streets into landscapes that seemed lifted from classical paintings. Our winter kimono, with their darker colors and heavier fabrics, provided both warmth and a different kind of elegance. The way the silk caught and reflected the light from paper lanterns, creating an almost ethereal effect as we moved through the snowy streets between engagements. The hot sake tasted better on cold nights, and the warmth of intimate gatherings felt more precious when contrasted with the chill waiting outside. As years passed, I began to understand that being a geisha meant becoming a living repository of cultural knowledge, a keeper of traditions that might otherwise be lost to the rushing pace of modern life. The songs we sang, the dances we performed, the way we prepared and served tea, even the manner in which we folded our hands or bowed our heads, all of these elements preserved something essential about Japanese aesthetics and values that existed nowhere else in quite the same form. The relationship between mentor and student that defined so much of our training extended far beyond the formal lessons in music, dance, and etiquette. My Wouldn, the senior geisha who guided my early development, taught me through observation and example how to handle difficult clients with grace, how to deflect unwanted advances without causing offense, how to build and maintain the kind of reputation that would sustain a long and successful career. These lessons often came without words, through subtle demonstrations of timing, attitude, and technique that could only be absorbed through careful attention and years of practice. The elaborate seasonal celebrations that punctuated our year required weeks of preparation, from selecting appropriate costumes and accessories to rehearsing special performances that might be presented only once or twice annually. The cherry blossom season brought particular intensity to our work, as Kyoto was filled with visitors eager to experience traditional culture alongside the natural beauty of the blooming trees. These busy periods tested our stamina and professionalism, as we might work from late afternoon until the early hours of morning for weeks at a time, maintaining our composure and artistic excellence despite exhaustion. Money flowed through our world in ways that could be both generous and precarious, with successful evenings bringing substantial tips and gifts, while slow periods could stretch uncomfortably long. Learning to manage finances became crucial to eventual independence, as the temptation to spend lavishly on beautiful objects, fine food, or personal luxuries could easily outpace even substantial earnings. The most successful geisha were often those who learned to live modestly despite their glamorous profession, saving carefully toward the day when they might open their own establishments or retire from active entertainment. The art of conversation proved as important as any of our formal artistic training. The ability to engage clients in discussions that were simultaneously entertaining, respectful, and intellectually stimulating. This required staying informed about current events, literature, arts, and culture, while also understanding the particular interests and backgrounds of regular patrons. Some clients preferred light banter and playful teasing, while others sought serious discussions about business, politics, or philosophy that could stretch deep into the night. Relationships with other geisha ranged from genuine friendship to polite professional cooperation to occasionally bitter rivalry. All of these dynamics playing out within the confines of our small community, where privacy was limited and reputations were constantly being evaluated and discussed. The most successful among us learned to be supportive of their sisters while remaining competitive enough to secure their own success, a balance that required considerable emotional maturity and social skill. The physical demands of our profession extended far beyond the obvious challenges of dancing in elaborate costumes or sitting formally for hours at a time. The weight of the traditional hairstyles, secured with multiple ornamental pins and combs, could cause headaches that lasted for days. The restrictive nature of properly worn kimono made simple actions like climbing stairs or getting in and out of cars exercises in grace and patience. Even sleeping required adaptation, as preserving elaborate hairstyles meant learning to rest without disturbing carefully arranged hair and ornaments. Gift giving and receiving became a complex language of its own, with the value, timing, and appropriateness of presents communicating messages about relationships, intentions, and status that went far beyond their monetary worth. Understanding these subtleties required years of observation and instruction, as a misjudged gift could cause embarrassment or offense, while an appropriately chosen present could cement important professional relationships or express gratitude in ways that words alone could not accomplish. The seasonal progression of our wardrobes followed rules established over centuries, with specific patterns, colors, and accessories appropriate for particular months or even specific weeks within seasons. This system created an elaborate calendar of beauty that connected our daily appearance to natural cycles and traditional festivals, making us living embodiments of the Japanese appreciation for seasonal awareness and aesthetic harmony. Learning when to wear which combination of kimono, obi, and accessories required memorizing countless details and developing an eye for subtle distinctions that might escape casual observation. Evening entertainment often extended well past midnight, requiring stamina and social energy that had to be carefully managed to maintain quality performance throughout long engagements. The ability to remain charming, attentive, and graceful during the final hours of an evening, when sake had been flowing freely and clients had become more casual in their behavior, distinguished professional geisha from mere entertainers. These late hours often brought both the greatest challenges and the most substantial financial rewards of our profession. The morning after particularly late evenings brought their own rituals of recovery and preparation, as we carefully removed elaborate makeup, treated our skin with special preparations, and gradually transitioned back to our ordinary selves before beginning the cycle again. The contrast between our glamorous evening personas and our simple morning appearances never ceased to amaze me. The way cosmetics and costume could create such complete transformations that even we sometimes forgot which version was more authentically ourselves. Training in traditional arts continued throughout our careers, as mastery of shamisen, dance, and tea ceremony required constant practice and refinement that could span decades. Even geisha who had been practicing for 20 or 30 years continued to study with masters, working to perfect techniques or learn new pieces that would keep their performances fresh and competitive. This commitment to lifelong learning distinguished our profession from many others, creating a culture of continuous improvement and artistic dedication. The business relationships we developed with restaurant owners, entertainment establishments, and regular clients required the same careful attention as our artistic training, as success in our profession depended as much on networking and reputation management as on talent and beauty. Understanding the preferences, schedules, and expectations of the various people who facilitated our work became crucial to maintaining steady employment and building toward eventual independence. Personal relationships outside the floating world became complicated by the demands and image of our profession, as potential romantic partners had to navigate their own feelings about dating someone whose work involved entertaining other men in intimate settings. Some geisha chose to forego serious relationships entirely during their active careers, while others found partners who could accept and even appreciate the unique demands of their profession. These relationships required extraordinary levels of trust, communication, and understanding from both parties. The tourist industry brought both opportunities and challenges to our profession, as foreign visitors provided new sources of income while sometimes misunderstanding the nature of our work or expecting experiences that had more to do with Western fantasies than Japanese traditions. Learning to educate tourists about the reality of geisha culture while providing entertainment that met their expectations required diplomacy, patience, and considerable cultural translation skills that went far beyond simple language interpretation. Seasonal festivals and celebrations provided some of our most prestigious and well-compensated work, as wealthy patrons competed to engage the most accomplished geisha for private parties during cherry blossom season, summer festivals, or New Year celebrations. These events often required months of preparation and coordination, as multiple geisha, musicians, and support staff worked together to create elaborate entertainments that might last entire weekends and involve dozens of guests. The apprenticeship system that governed our training created bonds between senior and junior geisha that could last lifetimes, as one continued to provide guidance and support long after their formal mentoring relationships had ended. These connections formed networks of mutual assistance and professional cooperation that helped sustain individual careers and preserve traditional knowledge across generations of practitioners. Photography sessions and media appearances became increasingly important aspects of our profession as public interest in traditional culture grew and tourism to Kyoto expanded. Learning to present ourselves appropriately for cameras while maintaining the mystery and dignity essential to our image required developing new skills that previous generations of geisha had never needed, as we balanced traditional reserve with modern publicity requirements. The economic changes that swept through Japan during my career affected our profession in countless ways, as traditional forms of entertainment competed with new technologies and changing social customs for the attention and spending of potential clients. Adapting to these changes while preserving the essential elements of our traditional role required flexibility, innovation, and a deep understanding of what aspects of our profession were timeless and which could be modified to meet contemporary needs. Regional variations in geisha culture meant that practitioners from different parts of Japan brought slightly different traditions, techniques, and perspectives to their work, creating opportunities for learning and exchange that enriched our understanding of our profession's diversity and evolution. Visiting geisha from other cities or hosting colleagues from distant regions provided insights into alternative approaches to training, performance, and business practices that helped broaden our professional horizons. The medical and health challenges associated with our profession extended beyond the obvious physical demands to include the effects of stress, irregular schedules, and the emotional labor required to maintain professional charm while dealing with difficult or inappropriate clients. Learning to care for our bodies and minds while meeting the demanding standards of our profession required developing personal strategies for rest, nutrition, and emotional self-protection that might not be immediately obvious to outside observers. Retirement planning became increasingly important as careers progressed, since the physical demands of our profession meant that active entertaining had natural limits that required preparation and alternative career paths. Some geisha transitioned into teaching roles, passing their knowledge to new generations, while others used their business connections and financial savings to establish their own entertainment venues or pursue entirely different careers outside the floating world. The preservation of traditional crafts and techniques associated with our profession required ongoing relationships with specialized artisans who created our costumes, accessories, and instruments according to methods that had been refined over centuries. Supporting these craftspeople through our purchases and commissions helped ensure that future generations of geisha would have access to the same quality of materials and workmanship that had defined our profession throughout its history. The psychological aspects of our work required developing sophisticated emotional intelligence and self-awareness as we learned to manage our own feelings while responding appropriately to the emotional needs of clients who might be celebrating successes, mourning losses, or simply seeking temporary escape from the pressures of their daily lives. This emotional labor, while rarely acknowledged explicitly, formed a crucial component of the value we provided through our professional services. International recognition of geisha culture brought both honor and responsibility to our profession, as we became ambassadors of Japanese traditional arts to global audiences who might have limited understanding of the historical and cultural contexts that shaped our work. Representing our culture accurately, while making it accessible to foreign visitors, required developing new forms of cultural translation and educational outreach that complemented our traditional entertainment roles. The daily rhythms of life in the Hanamachi created a unique community experience as we shared meals, gossip, challenges, and celebrations within the close confines of our traditional neighborhood. These relationships, while sometimes complicated by professional competition, provided emotional support and practical assistance that helped sustain us through the demanding aspects of our careers and created lasting bonds that extended far beyond our working years. Training new apprentices became one of the most rewarding aspects of advancing in our profession, as we passed along not only technical skills and cultural knowledge, but also the informal wisdom about navigating relationships, managing finances, and maintaining personal dignity that could only be learned through experience. watching young women develop confidence, skill, and their own artistic voices through patient instruction and encouragement provided deep satisfaction that balanced some of the more challenging aspects of our work. The intersection of tradition and modernity that defined contemporary geisha culture required constant negotiation and adaptation, as we sought to preserve essential elements of our heritage while responding to changing social conditions, economic pressures, and evolving client expectations. This balance demanded creativity, flexibility, and strong judgment about which innovations enhanced our profession and which might compromise its fundamental character and value. Personal growth within the context of such a highly structured and traditional profession occurred in unexpected ways, as the disciplines of our training developed qualities of patience, attention to detail, emotional resilience, and aesthetic sensitivity that enriched our lives far beyond their professional applications. Many of us discovered that the skills we developed as geisha served us well in other contexts, whether in subsequent careers, personal relationships, or simply in appreciating beauty and meaning in everyday experiences. The legacy of our profession extended beyond individual careers to encompass our role in preserving and transmitting cultural knowledge that connected contemporary Japan to its historical roots. Understanding this responsibility added depth and meaning to our daily work, as we recognized that our efforts to master traditional arts and maintain professional standards contributed to keeping alive cultural treasures that might otherwise be lost to the pressures of modernization and globalization. The subtle art of reading seasonal changes through our clients' moods and preferences became second nature over time, as we learned to anticipate when the melancholy of autumn would make them receptive to particular songs, or when the energy of spring would call for more lively entertainment and conversation. These cyclical patterns in human behavior mirrored the natural world around us, creating a deeper connection between our work and the rhythms that had governed Japanese life for centuries before our modern era began to obscure these ancient relationships. Late evening conversations often revealed the loneliness that existed behind the successful facades of our wealthy patrons. Men who had achieved everything society told them to want yet still felt empty or disconnected from meaningful relationships. In these moments, our role shifted from entertainer to confidant, requiring delicate balance between professional boundaries and genuine human compassion. Learning to provide emotional support without becoming emotionally entangled proved one of the most challenging aspects of our work, demanding maturity and wisdom that could only develop through years of experience and careful observation of our seniors' techniques. The economics of gift exchange within our profession created complex webs of obligation and appreciation that extended far beyond simple monetary transactions. A particularly thoughtful present from a regular client might obligate us to remember his preferences for years afterward, while our carefully chosen gifts to supporters and colleagues communicated respect, gratitude, and social awareness that could strengthen professional relationships in ways that direct payments could not accomplish. Understanding these subtleties required cultural knowledge that went far beyond what any formal training could provide. Weather affected every aspect of our work, From the practical challenges of protecting elaborate hairstyles and silk garments during Kyoto's humid summers to the way different atmospheric conditions influenced the mood and energy of evening gatherings. Rainy nights created intimate atmospheres that called for quieter entertainment and more personal conversation, while clear evenings with full moons inspired requests for classical dance pieces that celebrated natural beauty and seasonal themes that had inspired Japanese artists for countless generations. The technical aspects of shamisen performance continued to reveal new subtleties even after years of practice, as advanced pieces demanded not just finger dexterity and musical knowledge, but deep understanding of the emotional and narrative content that gave meaning to complex instrumental passages. Learning to convey stories through music without words required developing a sophisticated relationship between technique and expression that could take decades to fully mature, even for naturally gifted musicians who practiced daily. Professional jealousy among geisha manifested in ways both subtle and overt, from carefully worded comments that undermined rivals' reputations to more direct competition for prestigious engagements and valuable patrons. Navigating these dynamics while maintaining one's own integrity and professional standing required diplomatic skills that rivaled those of career politicians, as a single misstep in managing relationships with competitive colleagues could create lasting enmities that affected work opportunities for years. The process of selecting and maintaining our elaborate wardrobes involved relationships with dozens of specialized craftspeople, from the weavers who created our silk fabrics to the artisans who carved our combs and hairpins. These connections required careful nurturing, as the best craftsmen had waiting lists that could stretch for months or years, and maintaining priority access to their services could make the difference between having perfectly appropriate attire and settling for second-best options that might subtly undermine our professional image. Meal times in the Akiya provided opportunities for informal education that complemented our formal lessons, as senior geisha shared stories from their own experiences, offered advice about handling difficult situations, and passed along practical knowledge about everything from skincare routines that would preserve our appearance through years of heavy makeup to investment strategies that could provide financial security beyond our active careers. These conversations, conducted over simple meals of rice and pickled vegetables, often proved more valuable than any formal instruction. The art of flirtation within appropriate professional boundaries required extraordinary finesse, as our work demanded creating feelings of special attention and affection in clients, while never crossing lines that would compromise our reputations or create unrealistic expectations. This delicate dance of attraction and restraint became so refined through practice that we could make each client feel uniquely appreciated, while maintaining identical standards with all patrons, a skill that served us well in many contexts beyond our professional entertaining. Seasonal changes in our neighborhoods brought different challenges and opportunities, as summer festivals filled the streets with visitors seeking traditional experiences, while winter's quiet months allowed more time for intensive training and the cultivation of regular clientele who preferred intimate gatherings over large celebrations. Learning to adapt our business strategies to these natural rhythms helped ensure steady income throughout the year, while avoiding the feast or famine cycles that affected less experienced practitioners. The preservation of classical dance forms required not just learning choreographed movements, but understanding the cultural and historical context that gave meaning to abstract gestures and symbolic representations. A raised fan might represent falling snow, departing lovers, or the passage of time, and conveying these meanings clearly to audiences required deep knowledge of literary traditions, seasonal associations, and aesthetic conventions that formed the foundation of Japanese classical arts. Relationships with musicians who accompanied our performances created another layer of professional complexity, as successful collaborations required mutual respect, careful rehearsal, and the ability to adapt spontaneously to changing performance conditions. The best accompanists became trusted partners whose understanding of our individual styles and preferences enhanced our presentations, while poor musical support could undermine even the most skilled dancers' efforts to create meaningful artistic experiences. The daily ritual of removing our elaborate makeup became a meditation on transformation and identity, as we slowly revealed our natural faces beneath layers of white powder and carefully drawn features. This process, often conducted in silence after long evenings of performance, provided transition time between our professional personas and our private selves, allowing us to process the events of the evening while physically returning to our unadorned reality. Training in classical poetry expanded beyond mere memorization to encompass understanding the seasonal and emotional associations that gave deeper meaning to seemingly simple verses about flowers, weather, or natural phenomena. These literary skills enhanced our conversation abilities, while providing personal enrichment that made even mundane moments more meaningful, as we learned to notice and appreciate subtle beauties that might escape less educated observers. The business side of our profession required developing entrepreneurial skills that complemented our artistic training, as successful geisha learned to market their unique talents, build loyal clientele, and manage complex schedules that might include multiple engagements in single evenings. Understanding our own worth and communicating value to potential clients became as important as technical proficiency in traditional arts, particularly as competition increased and client expectations evolved. Personal safety in our profession required constant vigilance and the development of strategies for handling inappropriate behavior from clients who might misunderstand the nature of our services or who attempted to exploit our professional obligation to be charming and accommodating. Learning to deflect unwanted advances while maintaining cordial relationships required diplomatic skills that protected both our physical safety and our professional reputations in situations that could become complicated quickly. The physical spaces where we worked influenced every aspect of our performances, as traditional rooms with tatami floors, paper screens, and low lighting created intimate atmospheres that called for subtle gestures and quiet voices, while larger venues with Western-style furniture and bright illumination required different approaches to movement, projection, and audience engagement. Adapting our presentation style to various architectural contexts became second nature through experience. Collaboration with other traditional artists, from painters and calligraphers to flower arrangers and incense masters, enriched our understanding of the aesthetic principles that unified Japanese cultural expression across multiple disciplines. These relationships provided opportunities for artistic growth while creating networking connections that could lead to prestigious performance opportunities at cultural events and seasonal celebrations that attracted discerning audiences. The cyclical nature of our profession meant that career peaks and valleys followed predictable patterns related to age, health, economic conditions, and changing social preferences that affected demand for traditional entertainment. Understanding these cycles and preparing financially and emotionally for inevitable transitions became crucial for long-term success and personal satisfaction within a profession that demanded physical beauty and stamina that naturally declined over time. Regional dialects and cultural variations among clients from different parts of Japan required developing linguistic flexibility and cultural sensitivity that went beyond basic politeness to encompass understanding subtle differences in business practices, social expectations, and aesthetic preferences that could affect the success of professional relationships. These skills proved valuable in many contexts beyond our entertainment work. The intersection of our profession with Japan's rapidly changing social structure created both challenges and opportunities, as traditional forms of entertainment competed with new technologies and changing social customs for the attention and spending of potential clients. Adapting our marketing and presentation approaches to appeal to contemporary audiences while preserving essential traditional elements required creativity and careful judgment about which innovations enhanced our profession and which might compromise its fundamental character and value. Advanced training in tea ceremony revealed the profound philosophical dimensions underlying seemingly simple actions of preparing and serving tea, as every movement and timing carried symbolic meaning related to concepts of harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility that formed the foundation of Japanese aesthetic philosophy. Mastering these deeper aspects of our cultural education enriched our personal understanding while enhancing our ability to provide meaningful experiences for clients who appreciated cultural sophistication. The emotional challenges of maintaining professional warmth while protecting personal boundaries became more complex as relationships with regular clients developed over years of shared experiences, celebrations, and conversations. Some patrons became genuinely caring friends whose concern for our welfare extended beyond professional interactions, while others developed attachments that required careful management to prevent misunderstandings about the nature of our relationships. Seasonal variations in our makeup and costume choices reflected not just practical considerations like weather and comfort, but sophisticated aesthetic principles that connected our appearance to natural cycles and cultural traditions that had evolved over centuries. Learning to select appropriate colors, patterns, and accessories for specific occasions and times of year required developing an educated eye for subtle harmonies and cultural appropriateness that distinguished professional geisha from casual kimono wearers. The apprenticeship system that governed our training created lifelong bonds between mentors and students that extended far beyond formal educational relationships to encompass ongoing personal and professional support that could span decades. These connections formed networks of mutual assistance that helped sustain individual careers while preserving traditional knowledge and maintaining professional standards across generations of practitioners who might otherwise compete rather than collaborate. Advanced dance training revealed the sophisticated relationship between movement and music that characterized classical Japanese performance. As students learned to embody rhythmic patterns that were felt rather than simply heard, creating visual representations of complex musical structures that required years of practice to execute with convincing naturalism. The most accomplished dancers could make difficult techniques appear effortless, while conveying deep emotional content through seemingly simple gestures. The preservation of traditional crafts associated with our profession created relationships with artisans whose families had been serving geisha for generations, passing down techniques for creating specialized tools, instruments, and accessories that were available nowhere else. Supporting these craftspeople through our patronage helped ensure the survival of skills that might otherwise disappear as modern manufacturing replaced traditional hand production methods. Personal relationships outside our professional community required careful navigation of social expectations and potential prejudices. As romantic partners, friends, and family members might have misconceptions about our work that could create tension or misunderstanding. Learning to educate others about the reality of our profession while maintaining appropriate privacy about professional relationships and activities required diplomatic skills that served us well in many social contexts. The business aspects of our profession included understanding complex systems of payments, tips, and gifts that governed financial relationships with clients, establishments, and colleagues. These economic structures had evolved over generations to balance the interests of various parties while providing incentives for excellence and professional development. But mastering their intricacies required practical experience that could not be learned from textbooks or formal instruction alone. Weather patterns affected not just our immediate comfort and appearance, but the seasonal rhythms of business activity that determined when we could expect peak demand for our services and when slower periods might require careful financial management or opportunities for intensive training and personal development. Understanding these natural cycles helped us plan careers and manage resources more effectively than those who ignored environmental influences on human behavior and economic activity. The technical demands of maintaining elaborate hairstyles for days at a time required developing sleeping techniques, pillow arrangements, and morning maintenance routines that preserved carefully arranged coiffures while allowing adequate rest and comfort. These practical skills, while rarely discussed publicly, formed essential knowledge that distinguished experienced practitioners from newcomers who had not yet learned to manage the physical challenges of their profession. Client entertainment often involved navigating complex social dynamics among groups of patrons who might have business relationships, personal rivalries, or social hierarchies that affected how we distributed our attention and managed conversations to ensure that all participants felt appropriately honored, while avoiding accidentally favoring one individual in ways that might cause offense or embarrassment to others. The evolution of our profession in response to changing social conditions required balancing preservation of essential traditions with adaptation to contemporary needs and expectations, as we sought to maintain cultural authenticity while remaining relevant to modern audiences who might have different aesthetic preferences or entertainment expectations than previous generations of patrons who had supported traditional geisha culture. Advanced shamisen techniques involved not just technical proficiency, but deep understanding of musical interpretation that allowed performers to vary tempo, dynamics, and ornamental details to create unique versions of standard pieces that reflected personal artistic vision while respecting traditional parameters. Developing this level of musical sophistication required years of study with master teachers and constant practice that went far beyond basic competency. The social hierarchy within geisha communities reflected complex factors including artistic skill, business success, personal relationships, and length of service that determined precedence in professional situations, access to prestigious engagements, and influence in community decisions. Understanding and navigating these status systems required political awareness and diplomatic skills that complemented our artistic training. Seasonal festivals and celebrations provided opportunities for our most elaborate and prestigious performances, as wealthy patrons competed to engage accomplished geisha for private parties that might include dozens of guests and require coordination between multiple entertainers, musicians, and support staff to create events that could last entire weekends and involve elaborate themed entertainment programs. The preservation of regional variations in geisha traditions required maintaining connections with practitioners from other parts of Japan who brought different approaches to training, performance styles, and business practices that enriched our understanding of our profession's diversity while providing opportunities for artistic exchange and professional development through exposure to alternative techniques and perspectives. Training in classical literature enhanced our conversational abilities while providing personal enrichment that deepened our appreciation for the cultural traditions that shaped our profession. As familiarity with classical poetry, prose, and theatrical works provided references and associations that enriched our interactions with educated clients who valued intellectual as well as aesthetic sophistication in their entertainment choices. The daily rhythms of life in traditional neighborhoods created unique community experiences that connected us to historical patterns of urban living that had largely disappeared from modern Japanese cities. As our work schedules, transportation methods, and social interactions preserved elements of pre-modern lifestyle that provided both cultural value and practical challenges in contemporary settings. Financial planning for geisha required understanding investment strategies, savings programs, and alternative career paths that could provide security beyond our active entertaining years. As the physical demands of our profession naturally limited the duration of peak earning periods and required preparation for transitions to teaching, business ownership, or retirement that might occur earlier than in other professions. The intersection of traditional and modern medical practices in caring for the health challenges associated with our profession required finding practitioners who understood both the physical stresses of our work and the cultural importance of maintaining professional appearance and availability, even when dealing with injuries or illnesses that might sideline practitioners in other fields for extended periods. Personal growth within the highly structured environment of traditional geisha training occurred through disciplines that developed patience, attention to detail, emotional resilience, and aesthetic sensitivity that enriched our lives far beyond their immediate professional applications, creating qualities of character and perception that served us well in many contexts throughout our lives, regardless of how long we remained active in entertaining. The legacy of our profession included responsibility for preserving and transmitting cultural knowledge that connected contemporary Japan to its historical roots, as our mastery of traditional arts and maintenance of classical standards contributed to keeping alive cultural treasures that might otherwise be lost to pressures of modernization and changing social preferences that affected many aspects of traditional Japanese culture. Advanced training in multiple artistic disciplines created synergistic effects that enhanced our overall artistic development, as skills learned in dance informed our musical interpretation. Poetic studies enriched our conversational abilities, and tea ceremony training developed aesthetic sensitivity that improved our costume selection and general presentation. These interconnections among various arts created depth and sophistication that distinguished master practitioners from competent technicians. The tourism industry's impact on our profession created both opportunities and challenges, as foreign visitors provided new sources of income, while sometimes having unrealistic expectations based on popular misconceptions about geisha culture that required patient education and cultural translation to ensure satisfactory experiences for guests while maintaining the dignity and authenticity of our traditional role. Retirement transitions required careful planning and gradual adjustment as we moved from active entertaining to teaching, business ownership, or other careers that utilize the skills and knowledge developed during our years as practicing geisha. These changes often involved mixed emotions as we left behind the excitement and glamour of our performing years, while gaining new forms of satisfaction and responsibility in helping train the next generation or pursuing different forms of creative expression. The intricate relationships between different akiya in our district created a complex web of cooperation and competition that influenced everything from training opportunities to client referrals, as establishments with good reputations for producing skilled geisha often collaborated while also maintaining the healthy rivalry that pushed all practitioners to achieve higher standards of excellence in their artistic development and professional conduct. Winter mornings brought their own special rituals as we prepared for work in rooms heated only by small braziers, the cold making every movement deliberate and economical, while we applied makeup with fingers that sometimes trembled from the chill, creating an additional challenge to achieving the precise lines and smooth coverage that our professional appearance demanded regardless of physical comfort or environmental conditions. The psychology of performance became increasingly sophisticated as we learned to read audiences and adjust our presentations accordingly, developing intuitive understanding of when to be more reserved or animated, when to emphasize music over dance, when to encourage participation from guests, and when to maintain the mysterious distance that was often more entertaining than direct engagement with individual patrons or groups. Traditional games and diversions that we used to entertain clients required not just knowledge of rules and strategies, but understanding of the social dynamics they created, as competitive activities could reveal personality traits, create bonding opportunities, or generate tensions that we needed to manage skillfully to ensure that entertainment remained pleasant and harmonious for all participants throughout long evenings of varied activities. The seasonal progression of our artistic repertoire followed patterns established over centuries, with specific pieces appropriate for particular times of year based on their themes, musical qualities, or historical associations, creating a living calendar of cultural expression that connected our daily work to natural cycles and traditional festivals that had shaped Japanese consciousness for generations before our modern era. Professional networking extended beyond our immediate community to include relationships with restaurant owners, event planners, cultural organizations, and tourism agencies that could provide performance opportunities. While these business connections also required careful cultivation and maintenance through appropriate gifts, personal attention, and consistently reliable service that built reputations for professionalism and artistic excellence. The technical challenges of dancing in traditional costume on tatami floors demanded developing specialized techniques for movement that prevented tripping over long kimono hem, while maintaining the graceful gliding motion that characterized classical performance, skills that required months of practice and occasional embarrassing mishaps during training before becoming automatic responses that allowed focus to shift from basic locomotion to artistic expression. Language training became increasingly important as our clientele diversified to include foreign businessmen and tourists who might speak limited Japanese, requiring us to develop basic conversational abilities in English, Chinese, or Korean, while also learning cultural customs and business practices that would help us provide appropriate entertainment for guests from different backgrounds and social expectations. The economic impact of seasonal fluctuations in tourism and business entertainment meant that successful geisha learned to manage their finances carefully, saving during peak earning periods to sustain themselves through slower months, while also investing in ongoing training, costume maintenance, and other professional expenses that continued regardless of current income levels or business activity in the entertainment district. Personal health management, required developing strategies for maintaining stamina and preventing injuries despite the physical demands of our work. From foot care routines that prevented problems from walking in traditional footwear, to exercises that maintained flexibility and strength needed for dance performance, while also addressing the postural challenges created by wearing heavy costumes and sitting formally for extended periods. The apprenticeship experience included learning to navigate the complex emotional landscape of intensive training within a communal living environment, as young women from different backgrounds adjusted to sharing space, competing for attention and opportunities, supporting each other through difficulties, and developing the professional relationships that might continue throughout their careers in the entertainment world. Advanced makeup techniques went far beyond basic application to include understanding how different lighting conditions, seasonal changes, and individual facial features required subtle variations in color choices and application methods to achieve optimal results, while also learning to make adjustments throughout long evenings as natural oils, temperature changes, and physical activity affected the appearance and longevity of carefully applied cosmetics. The cultural significance of gift exchanges with clients required understanding not just appropriate types and values of presents, but the timing, presentation, and accompanying gestures that communicated respect, gratitude, and social awareness, as these interactions carried meanings that extended far beyond their monetary value to encompass complex messages about relationships, status, and mutual appreciation that could influence professional connections for years. Performance anxiety affected even experienced geisha when presenting new material or entertaining particularly important clients, requiring development of mental preparation techniques and coping strategies that allowed us to channel nervous energy into enhanced focus and artistic intensity, rather than allowing stress to compromise the quality of our presentations or the comfort of our audiences during special events or challenging performances. The intersection of our profession with changing social attitudes toward traditional gender roles created ongoing tensions and opportunities, as some clients appreciated what they saw as authentic examples of classical femininity, while others preferred more contemporary approaches to entertainment that reflected evolving expectations about women's capabilities, independence, and professional relationships with male colleagues and patrons. Seasonal variations in our daily schedules reflected both practical considerations about weather and comfort and cultural traditions that connected our work rhythms to natural cycles, festival calendars, and business patterns that had evolved over generations to optimize both artistic quality and economic success within the unique environment of traditional entertainment districts like those found in Kyoto and other historical cities. The preservation of classical music required not just learning to perform traditional pieces, but understanding their historical contexts, textual meanings, and stylistic variations that distinguish different schools of interpretation, while also maintaining instruments and equipment according to traditional methods that ensured optimal sound quality and longevity of valuable shamisen, drums, and other specialized equipment used in our performances. Personal relationships within our professional community ranged from genuine friendships that provided emotional support and practical assistance to more formal collegial connections based on mutual respect and shared professional interests. While all of these relationships required careful navigation to avoid conflicts that might damage reputations or interfere with work opportunities in our small, interconnected world. The business side of our profession included understanding legal requirements, tax obligations, and professional regulations that governed our work, while also learning to negotiate fair compensation, manage client expectations, and protect ourselves from exploitation by unscrupulous establishments or individuals who might attempt to take advantage of our dependence on others for booking engagements and managing business relationships. Training in classical dance required developing not just technical proficiency in choreographed movements, but deep understanding of the cultural and emotional content that gave meaning to abstract gestures. As successful performances conveyed stories, emotions, and aesthetic concepts that resonated with audiences who shared knowledge of the literary, historical, and artistic traditions that informed traditional Japanese performing arts. The daily transition from ordinary life to professional persona through the application of makeup, donning of elaborate costumes, and mental preparation for evening entertainment became a ritual transformation that helped separate personal identity from professional role, while also creating the psychological distance that allowed us to maintain appropriate emotional boundaries with clients who might otherwise intrude inappropriately on our private lives and personal relationships. Weather-related challenges to our work extended beyond simple comfort issues to include practical problems like protecting silk garments from rain, maintaining hairstyles in humidity, traveling safely on icy streets in traditional footwear, and adjusting performance spaces and activities when outdoor events had to move inside or when seasonal conditions affected the mood and energy levels of both performers and audiences during various types of engagements. The evolution of our profession in response to modern technology created both opportunities and challenges as photography, recorded music, and digital communication changed how we marketed our services, preserved artistic traditions, and maintained relationships with clients and colleagues, while also raising questions about privacy, authenticity, and the appropriate integration of contemporary tools with traditional practices and aesthetic values. Advanced shamisen performance required developing sophisticated listening skills that allowed musicians to blend seamlessly with singers and dancers, while also providing subtle leadership that guided overall performance timing and emotional development. Creating collaborative artistic experiences that showcased individual talents while supporting unified presentation that served the entertainment and aesthetic goals of each specific occasion or venue. The social dynamics within groups of clients required diplomatic skills that allowed us to manage conflicting personalities, differing expectations, and potentially awkward situations that might arise when business rivals, social competitors, or individuals with complicated personal histories found themselves sharing entertainment services during the same evening or extended event that required maintaining harmonious atmosphere despite underlying tensions. Professional development continued throughout our careers as we sought opportunities to study with master teachers, learn new repertoire, refine technical skills, and develop artistic interpretation that distinguished our individual talents while maintaining respect for traditional standards and classical requirements that formed the foundation of authentic geisha performance and cultural contribution to Japanese artistic heritage. The physical spaces where we lived and worked influenced every aspect of our presentation, from architectural features that affected acoustics and movement to lighting conditions that influenced makeup and costume choices, to spatial arrangements that determined interaction patterns with clients and colleagues during various types of engagements and cultural events that required different approaches to entertainment and hospitality. Client education became an increasingly important aspect of our work as we encountered patrons who had misconceptions about geisha culture based on popular media representations, requiring patient explanation of our actual role, training, and professional boundaries, while also providing entertainment that met their expectations for cultural authenticity and artistic quality during their introduction to traditional Japanese hospitality and aesthetic experience. The apprenticeship system created intense bonds between senior and junior geisha that could provide lifelong support and guidance, but also sometimes generated conflicts and resentments when expectations were not met, personalities clashed, or professional opportunities created competition between women who were simultaneously teachers and students, mentors and rivals within the complex hierarchy that governed our small professional community. Seasonal celebrations required weeks of preparation as we rehearsed special performances, selected appropriate costumes and accessories, and coordinated with musicians and other entertainers to create elaborate presentations that might occur only once or twice each year, making these events particularly precious opportunities to demonstrate artistic mastery, while also generating substantial income during peak tourism and entertainment seasons. The intersection of our traditional profession with contemporary Japanese society created ongoing negotiations about authenticity, cultural preservation, economic necessity, and personal fulfillment, as we sought to maintain meaningful connections to historical practices while adapting to modern conditions that affected everything from client expectations to business practices to personal lifestyle choices and career development opportunities. Financial management skills became crucial for long-term success as we learned to budget for irregular income, invest in professional development and equipment maintenance, save for retirement or career transitions, and navigate the complex economic relationships with akiya, establishments, and clients that determined our earning potential, while also preserving funds for personal expenses and family obligations that continued regardless of professional income fluctuations. The daily ritual of preparing for work became a meditation on transformation and identity, as we gradually shifted from our private selves to our professional personas through careful attention to every detail of appearance, posture, and mental attitude that would influence our ability to provide high-quality entertainment, while maintaining the mysterious dignity that distinguished accomplished geisha from ordinary performers or hospitality workers. Training in multiple artistic disciplines created synergistic effects that enhanced overall performance quality. As skills developed through dance training improved musical interpretation, literary studies enriched conversational abilities, and tea ceremony practice refined aesthetic sensitivity that influenced costume selection, gift choices, and general presentation of ourselves and our cultural knowledge to clients who appreciated sophisticated entertainment and authentic traditional experiences. The tourism industry's growth created new opportunities for cultural education and international exchange, while also challenging us to explain complex traditional practices to visitors who might have limited background knowledge or unrealistic expectations based on popular misconceptions, requiring development of educational skills that complemented our entertainment abilities. Personal growth within our highly structured professional environment occurred through disciplines that developed patience, emotional intelligence, aesthetic appreciation, and cultural knowledge that enriched our lives far beyond their immediate practical applications, creating qualities of character and perception that served us well in many contexts, regardless of how long we remained active in traditional entertainment or what other careers we might pursue later. The legacy of our profession extended beyond individual careers to encompass our collective responsibility for preserving cultural knowledge and artistic traditions that connected contemporary Japan to its historical roots, while also adapting these practices to remain relevant and meaningful for future generations who might face very different social and economic conditions than those that had sustained geisha culture throughout its evolution. Advanced training revealed the profound philosophical dimensions underlying seemingly simple aspects of our work, from the symbolic meanings embedded in seasonal costume choices to the spiritual principles that guided tea ceremony practice, to the emotional truths that classical dance and music could express when performed with deep understanding of their cultural significance and artistic potential for creating transcendent aesthetic experiences. The conclusion of active careers in traditional entertainment required careful planning and emotional adjustment as we transition to new roles as teachers, business owners, or practitioners of other professions, while maintaining connections to the community and cultural traditions that had shaped our identities and provided meaning during our years of intensive artistic development and professional service in preserving and sharing Japan's traditional entertainment arts. The enduring satisfaction derived from mastering traditional arts and contributing to cultural preservation provided meaning that extended far beyond financial rewards or social recognition, as we understood that our individual efforts participated in a collective enterprise that maintained living connections to historical wisdom, aesthetic principles, and spiritual insights that had sustained Japanese civilization through centuries of change, while continuing to offer beauty, meaning, and transcendence to contemporary audiences seeking authentic experiences of traditional culture. The morning light filtering through paper screens created patterns that changed throughout the seasons, and I learned to read these subtle shifts as markers of time, that governed not only our costume choices and artistic repertoire, but also the emotional undercurrents that influenced client preferences and social dynamics within our carefully orchestrated world of traditional entertainment and cultural preservation. Memory became a crucial professional tool as we developed the ability to recall intricate details about regular patrons' personal preferences, family celebrations, business concerns, and conversational interests that might be mentioned casually during one engagement, and then referenced appropriately weeks or months later to demonstrate the kind of personal attention that distinguished exceptional service from merely competent performance of our basic professional duties. The complexity of scheduling multiple engagements required diplomatic skills that allowed us to honor commitments to different clients, while managing the inevitable conflicts that arose when important patrons requested our services for overlapping time periods, situations that demanded creative solutions and careful communication to avoid offending valuable customers, while maintaining our reputation for reliability and professional courtesy. Traditional craftsmanship in the creation of our instruments, costumes, and accessories connected us to artisan communities whose families had been serving geisha for generations, and these relationships required ongoing cultivation through regular patronage, appropriate seasonal gifts, and respectful appreciation for skills that were becoming increasingly rare as modern manufacturing replaced hand production methods that had created the finest quality materials for centuries. The psychological challenges of maintaining professional warmth and charm during difficult periods in our personal lives required developing emotional resilience and performance skills that allowed us to compartmentalize private concerns while providing consistent entertainment quality, regardless of our internal state, a discipline that served us well beyond our professional context, but demanded considerable mental energy and emotional maturity. Regional variations in client expectations meant that businessmen from Tokyo might prefer different types of entertainment than local Kyoto patrons, while international visitors brought their own cultural assumptions and desires that required adaptation of our standard presentation. Approaches to ensure satisfactory experiences while maintaining the authenticity and dignity that formed the foundation of our professional identity and cultural contribution. The seasonal rhythm of training intensified during slower business periods, when we had more time available for studying new repertoire, refining technical skills, and working with master teachers who might otherwise be too busy to provide individual attention, making these quieter months crucial for artistic development that would enhance our performance quality during subsequent peak seasons when entertainment demand increased dramatically. Professional networking extended beyond our immediate community to include relationships with cultural organizations, museums, universities, and international institutions that provided opportunities for educational presentations, cultural exchange programs, and artistic collaborations that enriched our understanding of our profession's significance, while creating alternative income sources and career development possibilities. The technical demands of our profession required ongoing attention to physical conditioning that maintained the flexibility, stamina, and grace necessary for dance performance, while also developing the vocal strength and breath control needed for singing, as these physical capabilities naturally declined with age and required proactive maintenance through appropriate exercise, nutrition, and healthcare practices. Weather patterns affected not only our immediate comfort and professional activities, but also the broader economic cycles that influenced tourism, business entertaining, and seasonal celebrations that determined our earning opportunities throughout the year, making it essential to understand and adapt to these natural rhythms that had governed Japanese cultural life for centuries before modern technology began to obscure these ancient relationships. The apprenticeship experience included learning to navigate complex social hierarchies and unwritten rules that governed interactions between different levels of practitioners, as well as developing the emotional intelligence necessary to maintain harmonious relationships within our small community, despite the competitive pressures and personality conflicts that inevitably arose in any professional environment where individual success depended partly on relative standing among peers. Client entertainment often involved managing delicate social situations where business relationships, personal rivalries, or family connections among patrons created underlying tensions that could affect the atmosphere of gatherings, requiring diplomatic skills and social awareness that allowed us to facilitate positive interactions while avoiding accidentally exacerbating existing conflicts through inappropriate attention distribution or conversational choices. The preservation of traditional music required not only learning to perform classical pieces, but understanding their historical development, regional variations, and cultural significance that gave deeper meaning to what might otherwise seem like abstract artistic exercises, while also maintaining the specialized instruments and equipment according to traditional methods that ensured optimal performance quality and longevity of valuable materials. Personal relationships outside our professional community required careful management of boundaries and expectations, as friends, family members, and romantic partners might have difficulty understanding the demands of our work or accepting the nature of our client relationships. Situations that demanded clear communication about professional requirements while maintaining the personal connections that provided emotional support and normal social interaction beyond our work environment. The business aspects of our profession included understanding tax obligations, legal requirements, and professional regulations, while also developing skills in contract negotiation, client relationship management, and financial planning that would provide security and independence beyond our active entertaining years. Knowledge that many practitioners had to acquire through experience rather than formal education. Advanced dance training revealed the sophisticated relationship between movement and emotional expression that characterized classical Japanese performance arts, as students learned to convey complex narratives and subtle feelings through choreographed gestures that required years of practice to execute with convincing naturalness, while maintaining the technical precision that distinguished professional presentation from amateur attempts at traditional art forms. The daily transformation from private individual to professional entertainer through elaborate preparation, rituals created psychological transitions that helped separate personal identity from work role, but also required developing healthy strategies for maintaining authentic self-knowledge and emotional balance, despite spending significant portions of our lives presenting carefully constructed personas that might be quite different from our natural personalities and private concerns. Seasonal festivals provided opportunities for our most prestigious and well-compensated performances, while also creating intense pressure to demonstrate mastery of traditional arts during events that attracted sophisticated audiences who could readily distinguish between competent and exceptional presentation of classical repertoire, making these occasions both exciting opportunities for artistic recognition and challenging tests of our professional development. The intersection of our traditional profession with rapidly changing Japanese society required ongoing adaptation of our marketing approaches, performance styles, and business practices, while maintaining the essential cultural authenticity that distinguished genuine geisha from other forms of entertainment. A balance that demanded wisdom about which innovations enhanced our cultural contribution and which might compromise our fundamental identity and value. Training in classical literature and poetry enhanced our conversational abilities while providing personal enrichment that deepened our appreciation for the aesthetic principles and philosophical concepts that informed traditional Japanese arts, creating intellectual resources that made us more interesting companions for educated clients, while also contributing to our own spiritual and emotional development throughout our careers. The tourism industry's impact on our profession created opportunities for cultural education and international exchange, while also challenging us to explain complex traditional practices to visitors who might have limited background knowledge or unrealistic expectations based on popular misconceptions, requiring development of educational skills that complemented our entertainment abilities. Professional development continued throughout our careers as we sought opportunities to study with renowned teachers, learn specialized techniques, and develop artistic interpretation that reflected our individual talents while respecting traditional parameters, creating ongoing challenges and satisfactions that prevented our work from becoming routine despite years of practice and performance experience. The physical spaces where we worked influenced every aspect of our presentation, from architectural features that affected acoustics and movement to lighting conditions that influenced makeup and costume choices to spatial arrangements that determined interaction patterns with clients and colleagues during various types of engagements and cultural events that required different approaches to entertainment and hospitality. Personal health management became increasingly important as our careers progressed, and the cumulative effects of physical demands, irregular schedules, and professional stress required proactive attention to prevent problems that could compromise our ability to maintain the high standards expected of experienced practitioners, while also developing sustainable lifestyle practices that would support long-being. The apprenticeship system created lifelong bonds between mentors and students that provided ongoing professional guidance and personal support, while also sometimes generating conflicts when expectations were not met, or when competitive pressures created tensions between women who served simultaneously as teachers and role models, advisors and rivals within our small professional community. Client relationships evolved over time from initial formal interactions to deeper familiarity that required ongoing management of boundaries and expectations, as regular patrons might develop personal attachments that went beyond appropriate professional parameters. Situations that demanded diplomatic skills and emotional intelligence to maintain valuable business connections, while protecting our personal autonomy and professional reputation. The economic realities of our profession required understanding complex financial relationships among clients, establishments, and practitioners that had evolved over generations to balance various interests, while providing incentives for excellence and professional development. Systems that could be difficult to navigate without practical experience and guidance from senior colleagues who understood traditional practices and contemporary adaptations. Seasonal changes affected not only our repertoire and costume choices, but also the emotional atmosphere and energy levels that characterize different times of year. As spring's renewal inspired romantic themes and optimistic presentations, while autumn's melancholy called for more contemplative entertainment that matched the psychological rhythms that had influenced Japanese cultural expression for centuries. The preservation of traditional crafts associated with our profession required maintaining relationships with specialized artisans whose families had been creating our tools, instruments, and accessories for generations. Connections that demanded ongoing support through regular purchases and appropriate recognition of skills that were becoming increasingly rare as modern manufacturing replaced traditional hand production methods. Professional jealousy and competition among geisha manifested in both subtle and overt forms that required careful navigation to maintain collegial relationships while protecting our own interests and reputation. As success in our profession depended partly on relative standing within our community and access to the most prestigious engagements and valuable patrons who provided both financial rewards and career advancement opportunities. The technical challenges of performing in traditional costume on various surfaces and in different lighting conditions required developing specialized skills that allowed us to maintain grace and artistic quality, regardless of environmental factors. Abilities that came only through extensive practice and occasional embarrassing mistakes during our training period before these adaptations became automatic responses that freed our attention for artistic expression. Language training became increasingly important as our clientele diversified to include foreign business visitors and tourists who might have limited Japanese ability, requiring development of conversational skills in multiple languages, while also learning cultural customs and business practices that would help us provide appropriate entertainment for guests from different backgrounds and social expectations. The daily rhythms of life in traditional neighborhoods created unique community experiences that connected us to historical patterns of urban living that had largely disappeared from contemporary Japanese cities. As our work schedules, social interactions, and daily activities preserved elements of pre-modern lifestyle that provided both cultural value and practical challenges in modern settings. Financial planning for long-term security required developing investment strategies and alternative career preparation that would provide stability beyond our active entertaining years, as the physical demands of our profession naturally limited the duration of peak earning periods and required early preparation for transitions to teaching, business ownership, or other careers that could utilize the skills and knowledge developed through geisha training. The intersection of traditional and modern approaches to health care required finding practitioners who understood both the specific challenges associated with our profession and the cultural importance of maintaining professional appearance and availability, even when dealing with health issues that might require extended recovery time in other occupations, creating unique medical and wellness needs. Personal growth within the structured environment of traditional training occurred through disciplines that developed patience, aesthetic sensitivity, emotional intelligence, and cultural knowledge that enriched our lives far beyond their immediate professional applications, creating qualities of character and perception that proved valuable in many contexts throughout our lives, regardless of career duration or subsequent professional choices. The legacy of our profession encompassed individual artistic achievement and collective responsibility for cultural preservation that connected contemporary Japan to its historical roots, while adapting traditional practices to remain meaningful and relevant for future generations, who would inherit both opportunities and challenges different from those we had faced during our own careers in traditional entertainment. Advanced training revealed philosophical and spiritual dimensions underlying our work that transformed seemingly simple activities into opportunities for personal development and cultural contribution, as mastery of traditional arts required understanding not only technical requirements, but also the aesthetic principles and emotional truths that these practices had preserved and transmitted across generations of dedicated practitioners. The conclusion of active careers in traditional entertainment marked transitions to new roles that might include teaching, cultural advocacy, business ownership, or entirely different professions. Changes that required emotional adjustment while maintaining connections to the community and traditions that had shaped our identities and provided meaning during years of intensive artistic development and professional service. The enduring satisfaction derived from contributing to cultural preservation and artistic excellence provided rewards that transcended material considerations or social recognition, as we understood that our individual efforts participated in maintaining living connections to wisdom, beauty, and spiritual insight that had sustained Japanese civilization, while continuing to offer meaning and transcendence to contemporary audiences seeking authentic experiences of traditional culture and timeless human values. The final years of active practice brought a different kind of beauty to our work, as the accumulated wisdom of decades spent mastering traditional arts allowed us to perform with a depth and subtlety that younger practitioners, despite their physical advantages, could not yet achieve through technical skill alone. The slight tremor in aging hands became part of the shamisen voice, and the measured pace of movement that replaced youthful energy carried its own grace that spoke of lives fully lived within the confines of ancient traditions. Retirement ceremonies marked the end of our active careers, with rituals that acknowledged both personal achievement and collective loss. As each departing geisha took with her irreplaceable knowledge and experience that could never be fully transferred to younger practitioners. Despite years of teaching and mentoring that attempted to preserve what could be preserved of individual interpretation and artistic insight, developed through decades of dedicated practice. The younger generation of geisha who replaced us brought their own innovations and adaptations to traditional forms, modifications that sometimes seemed shocking to those of us who had learned our craft during more conservative periods. Yet these changes also represented the natural evolution that had always characterized our profession, as it adapted to changing social conditions while maintaining its essential cultural identity and artistic integrity. Watching former apprentices develop into accomplished performers provided deep satisfaction that balanced the melancholy of our own declining abilities, as we recognized in their achievements the continuation of traditions that we had devoted our lives to preserving and transmitting. Understanding that our individual careers had meaning primarily as parts of an ongoing collective enterprise that transcended any single practitioner's contributions or limitations. The modern world intruded increasingly upon our traditional neighborhoods as development pressures, changing demographics, and evolving entertainment preferences challenged the economic viability of maintaining authentic geisha districts in their historical forms, creating uncertainty about whether future generations would have opportunities to experience the cultural immersion that had shaped our own artistic development and professional identity. Personal relationships in our later years often involved reconciling with family members who had been estranged by our career choices, as aging parents or distant siblings sought reconnection with daughters and sisters whose lives had taken paths that earlier generations might have found difficult to understand or accept. Conversations that required mutual forgiveness and recognition of different values and life priorities. The physical spaces where we had spent our working lives gradually changed as traditional buildings gave way to modern construction. Familiar businesses closed or relocated, and the intimate scale of our neighborhoods was altered by broader urban development that threatened to dissolve the unique atmosphere that had sustained geisha culture for generations. Losses that felt personal despite their inevitability. Financial security in our later years depended partly on investments and savings accumulated during our active careers, but also on the ongoing support of former clients who had developed genuine appreciation for our cultural contributions and personal qualities that transcended mere entertainment value. Relationships that evolved into something approaching friendship, despite their origins in commercial transactions. Teaching responsibilities increased as we transitioned from active performance to cultural transmission roles, sharing not only technical knowledge about traditional arts, but also practical wisdom about managing the psychological, social, and economic challenges that had always characterized our profession. Guidance that could only be provided by those who had navigated these difficulties successfully over many years of experience. The preservation of our cultural legacy required cooperation with museums, universities, and cultural institutions that sought to document and display aspects of geisha life and traditional arts. Collaborations that sometimes felt intrusive or reductive, as we attempted to explain complex lived experiences through academic frameworks that might miss essential elements of what we had actually experienced and learned. International recognition of geisha culture as an important cultural heritage brought both honor and responsibility as we became ambassadors of Japanese traditional arts to global audiences, roles that required developing new skills in cultural translation and public presentation, while maintaining the dignity and authenticity that had always distinguished our profession from mere entertainment or performance art. The daily routines of retirement felt strange after decades of elaborate preparation rituals and evening engagements, as we learned to occupy time that had previously been structured by professional obligations, discovering new forms of satisfaction in simple activities that we had rarely had time to enjoy during our active careers, when every moment was dedicated to maintaining professional standards and meeting client expectations. Health challenges that came with aging required adapting to physical limitations that made formerly effortless activities difficult or impossible. Adjustments that were particularly poignant for those of us whose identities had been so closely tied to physical grace, artistic skill, and the maintenance of beauty standards that had defined our professional worth and personal self-concept for most of our adult lives. Memories became increasingly precious as we recognized that we were among the last practitioners to have experienced certain aspects of traditional geisha culture that were disappearing under pressure from modernization, economic changes, and evolving social attitudes, making us living repositories of knowledge and experience that would be lost when our generation passed away. The younger women who entered our profession brought different expectations and life goals than previous generations, often viewing geisha training as temporary cultural experience rather than lifetime commitment. Changes that reflected broader social transformations, while also creating challenges for maintaining the depth of knowledge and skill that had traditionally characterized accomplished practitioners. Our former apprentices, now mature professionals, occasionally sought our advice about career decisions, personal relationships, or artistic challenges, interactions that provided opportunities to continue our teaching role while also learning from their perspectives about adapting traditional practices to contemporary conditions that we might not fully understand despite our greater experience. The seasonal cycles that had governed our working lives continued to influence our retirement years, as spring cherry blossoms, summer festivals, autumn leaves, and winter snow carried associations with countless performances, celebrations, and professional experiences that had marked the passage of time throughout our careers, memories that enriched our appreciation for natural beauty, while sometimes triggering melancholy for opportunities that would not come again. Family relationships in our later years often involved complicated negotiations about inheritance, care responsibilities, and family traditions as relatives who had been distant during our active careers sought to reconnect or claim association with accomplishments they had not always supported, situations that required wisdom about forgiveness, boundaries, and the complex loyalties that had shaped our unconventional life choices. The transformation of our neighborhoods into tourist destinations brought mixed feelings as we watched strangers photographing buildings where we had lived and worked, reading guidebook descriptions of our profession that often missed essential aspects of what we had actually experienced, commercialization that provided economic support for preserving physical structures, while sometimes trivializing the cultural practices they had housed. Personal possessions accumulated over decades of professional practice held both financial and sentimental value that made decisions about disposal or inheritance emotionally complex, as costume collections, instruments, and accessories represented not only valuable assets, but also tangible connections to specific performances, relationships, and stages of artistic development that had defined our careers. The recognition that came with surviving long enough to be considered living cultural treasures brought respect and attention that we had not always received during our active careers. Acknowledgement that was gratifying despite sometimes feeling like consolation prizes for outlasting many of our contemporaries who had possessed equal or greater artistic gifts, but had not been fortunate enough to enjoy long lives. Writing or recording our memories for preservation by cultural institutions required painful decisions about what aspects of our experience to share publicly and what knowledge should remain private, as the intimate nature of some client relationships and the complex internal dynamics of our professional community involved confidences and personal information that demanded discretion, even decades after the events occurred. The continuing evolution of Japanese society created distance between our lived experience and contemporary reality that sometimes made us feel like visitors from another era. As young people encountered our stories and traditions with curiosity and respect, but also with fundamental assumptions about gender roles, career choices, and personal autonomy that differed profoundly from the values that had shaped our own development. Evening activities in retirement often involved quiet pursuits that would have seemed impossibly boring during our active careers, when every night brought new challenges, performances, and social interactions, but which now provided peaceful satisfaction as we discovered pleasures in solitude, simple meals, and early bedtime that had been impossible during decades of late-night professional obligations. The gradual loss of friends and colleagues who had shared our professional journey created increasing isolation, tempered by deeper appreciation for relationships that had survived the competitive pressures and personality conflicts that had sometimes divided our community during our working years. As advancing age reminded us that understanding and support were more valuable than career advancement or social status. Dreams often featured scenarios from our active careers, performances we had given decades earlier, conversations with long-dead clients or colleagues, elaborate preparation rituals that our bodies could no longer perform, memories that seemed more vivid than present reality, and provided both comfort and poignant reminders of capabilities and experiences that belonged irretrievably to the past. The knowledge that our individual stories would soon be lost despite efforts to preserve aspects of geisha culture through documentation and education created urgency about sharing what we could, while also accepting that much of what we had learned and experienced was inherently ephemeral, tied to specific relationships, moments, and cultural contexts that could never be fully recreated or transmitted to future generations. Our final contributions to the preservation of traditional arts took various forms, from teaching and cultural consultation to simply serving as examples of what dedicated practice could achieve over lifetimes spent in service to aesthetic principles and cultural values that had sustained Japanese civilization through centuries of change, while continuing to offer beauty, meaning, and transcendence to those willing to commit themselves fully to these demanding but ultimately rewarding disciplines. The conclusion of our earthly participation in the floating world marked not endings but transitions, as the knowledge, artistry, and cultural wisdom we had cultivated would continue influencing future practitioners, inspiring new generations of students, and contributing to the ongoing preservation and evolution of traditions that connected contemporary Japan to its deepest cultural roots, while adapting to serve the spiritual and aesthetic needs of whatever social conditions the future might bring to this ancient land of seasonal beauty, artistic refinement, and profound respect for the transformative power of dedicated practice in service to ideals greater than individual ambition or material success.